The Chernobyl disaster, when man split the atom and the atom split the world. April 26, 1986, 1:23 a.m. in the depths of Soviet Ukraine. Reactor number 4 at the Vladimir Ilyich Lenin nuclear power plant was about to become the most dangerous place on Earth. What began as a routine safety test would, in mere seconds, unleash more radiation than the atomic bombs dropped on Hiroshima and Nagasaki combined. But here's the twist that makes Chernobyl uniquely terrifying. This wasn't an attack, an earthquake, or an act of God. This was human error meeting Soviet arrogance in the most catastrophic way imaginable. The perfect storm of secrecy and science. Picture this. You're an operator in the world's most secretive nuclear program, working with a reactor design so flawed that its very existence was classified. The RBM K1000 reactor had a dirty secret. Under certain conditions, it could become uncontrollably violent. Western nuclear engineers knew this. Soviet engineers knew this. But the operators who worked with it daily, they were kept deliberately ignorant. The reactor's Achilles heel was its positive void coefficient, a phrase that sounds innocent, but hides a terrifying reality. When power dropped low and steam bubbles formed in the coolant, this reactor didn't slow down like Western designs. It accelerated. It was like driving a car where pressing the brakes could sometimes make you go faster, and the Soviet operators weren't told about this potentially lethal quirk. The test that broke the world. On that fateful April night, shift supervisor Alexander Akimov and reactor operator Leonid Topchinov were conducting what should have been a simple test. They wanted to see if, during a power outage, the reactor's own spinning turbines could generate enough electricity to power the cooling pumps until backup generators kicked in. It was actually a safety test, a cruel irony that would haunt survivors forever. But here's where the story takes its first dark turn. The test had been delayed for over 10 hours due to grid demands. By the time it began, the reactor was poisoned with xenon-135, a neutron-absorbing byproduct that made the reactor sluggish and unpredictable. Instead of postponing, the operators pressed on, violating multiple safety protocols in their determination to complete the test before the next shift arrived. To overcome the xenon poisoning, they withdrew nearly all the control rods, the reactor's primary safety mechanism. Imagine removing the brakes from a race car and then wondering why you can't control your speed. They were flying blind with a weapon of mass destruction. 1:23 a.m., the moment everything changed. At exactly 1 hour and 23 minutes past midnight, Senior Reactor Control Engineer Leonid Topchinov pressed the AZ5 button, the emergency shutdown. In a properly functioning reactor, this would have been salvation. In Chernobyl's Reactor 4, it became the trigger for disaster. The control rods began descending, but here was Chernobyl's final, fatal design flaw. The tips of these safety rods were made of graphite, which actually accelerated the nuclear reaction before the neutron-absorbing material could take effect. For a few critical seconds, inserting the safety rods made the reactor more dangerous, not less. The power surge was unimaginable. Estimates suggest it reached 30,000 megawatts, 10 times the reactor's capacity. The fuel rods shattered. Superheated steam exploded upward with the force of a volcanic eruption. And a 1,000-ton concrete cap was hurled into the air like a coin toss. But this wasn't the end of the explosion, it was just the beginning. The Forbidden City awakens. Within the reactor core, temperatures soared past 2,000 degrees Celsius. The graphite moderated 2,000 tons of nuclear-grade carbon began to burn, creating a radioactive bonfire that would rage for 10 days. This wasn't just any fire. It was an atomic furnace pumping radiation directly into the atmosphere, creating the world's largest dirty bomb. The immediate area became what scientists now call the Red Forest. Pine trees turned ginger and died within hours, absorbing so much radiation they couldn't be safely buried for decades. Animals fled in confusion, birds fell from the sky, and the very air became visible as ionized particles danced like deadly fireflies. Pripyat, the model Soviet city built to house the plant's workers, lay sleeping just 3 kilometers away. Its 50,000 residents had no idea they were breathing radioactive particles with every breath. Children played in contaminated playgrounds while radioactive debris, some glowing with an eerie blue light, lay scattered like deadly confetti throughout the surrounding forest. The lies that killed perhaps the most chilling aspect of Chernobyl wasn't the explosion itself, but the Soviet response. For the first crucial hours, denial reigned supreme. Plant director Viktor Bryakonov, faced with reports of a destroyed reactor core, famously declared it impossible and ordered measurements that showed otherwise to be dismissed as instrument error. While radiation poured into the atmosphere, Soviet authorities crafted a narrative of control. The first official statement claimed a minor accident with no casualties. Pripyat residents were told to stay indoors and wash their windows as if soap and water could scrub away atomic contamination. The May Day parade in nearby Kiev proceeded as planned, with children marching beneath invisible clouds of cesium-137 and strontium-90. This wasn't just bureaucratic incompetence. It was institutionalized delusion meeting nuclear reality. The same system that had built the reactor, while ignoring its flaws, now refused to acknowledge the scope of the disaster it had created. Heroes in hell yet. From this man made apocalypse emerged extraordinary heroism. Plant engineer Valery Kodemchuk was likely the first to die, vaporized instantly in the explosion. But others ran toward the danger when every instinct screamed to flee. Firefighter Lieutenant Vladimir Provik led his crew onto the reactor building's roof, where graphite chunks glowed like hot coals and radiation levels were lethal within minutes. These men knew they were walking into death there. Radio equipment failed immediately. Due to electromagnetic interference, yet they continued fighting the blaze with water, unknowingly making the situation worse by creating radioactive steam. The most haunting heroism belonged to 3 engineers: Alexei Ananenko, Valery Bespalov, and Boris Baronov, who dove beneath the reactor to drain water.